there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ајде, мајката!
Господе чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
It is December 24, Christmas Eve for many Christians around the world, including Protestants, as we record this last day of 2023 podcast. We'll highlight a few recent news items from Macedonia, including new U.S. Treasury, quote, blacklist, unquote, members, new poll numbers for the upcoming elections in Macedonia, and the fallout from a tragic event that shook Macedonia and Macedonians to their core. We'll discuss all this and more in this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin Chilimanov in Skopje, Macedonia.
And as I mentioned, it is December 24. It is probably it's the last time we'll do a podcast for this calendar year. Mm-hmm. We'll look at the new year. I don't know if we'll get one in before Macedonian Christmas or not. We'll see. It depends.
Well, it depends on events.
On events, yes. As what was the famous British Prime Minister?
What do you fear?
No, he said. I think what will your administration be focused on or guided by? Events, dear boy, events. So, So that's one of those things, little factoids. I've got to remember the name and the context so I can use it because it's events, dear boy, events.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's tell you what. Let's start. I on the monologue, brief monologue there. I mentioned the tragic event. Let's start with that and get that out of the way so that we can move on through these things and end maybe with a preview of 2024, which will also be tragic.
We have no shortage of events, of ugly events, but even for 2020 or for this century standards, this was really ugly. What happened?
Yes.
We had one thing going here in this country, like it's definitely not the economy or the environment or infrastructure. We had safety, you could count on allowing your kid walk down the street, going to school, going out at night safely, and even that's now out the window. We had a crazy case of kidnapping of a 14-year-old girl as she was going to school. What was it, on 28th, I think? It was on the day when this big OSC conference was about to start in Skopje.
Right, yeah.
This week, practically. It was that week. Practically, we had the entire police mobilized, streets closed, everything was under surveillance. And then there are reports that a girl went missing going to school. Her name is Vanja. She lives in downtown Skopje, in obviously safe area. School is nearby. Usually goes to school with her sister, but this day she does not go. She goes alone, and because her sister is sickly. And goes missing for 4 or 5 days during this conference. And people are speculating, I don't know, ran off with a boyfriend. Then we realize that the parents are estranged, so then we think, okay, maybe she went with her father. And then I think it was on the Friday or Saturday, the news breaks that she was found murdered near Skopje. And then by the evening, and then the perpetrators were arrested. To avoid interethnic tensions, the police made sure to note that it's from the same ethnic group, so basically Macedonians, that it's not an interethnic thing. And then by the evening, it was revealed that the organizer of the kidnapping, and apparently the person who carried out this killing, is Ljupčo Palevski Palča, a well-known politician here. And that he runs like a fringe nationalist party, and that people from his political background, his retinue, one like older guy, one like karate teacher, so practically the muscle in this, if you even needed muscle in this operation, that I think 3 people in total were helping him out. And then we get I mean, obviously there are a lot of speculation, but we get speculation that also the estranged father was involved in this, that he practically tipped off, that he was friends with Palevsky, that he wanted to take some money from the mother, which he recently inherited or sold an apartment, that she had rich parents, etc. And that he helped the group follow the girl, grab her, or maybe even invited her in the car. And then somehow the whole thing went bad. And Palevsky allegedly himself killed the girl with a pistol. And then they buried her in a village outside of Skopje. And then the group were arrested. The father was arrested. He was weirdly like smiling, giving like the V sign or something to the press while being carried to the courthouse. So, you know, you can imagine I didn't even want to follow the details too closely.
Yeah.
Palevsky fled the country, was arrested, fled to Serbia, and then to Turkey, through Bulgaria apparently, and was arrested near Istanbul, allegedly walking down a highway by himself in winter. And he's now in extradition arrest. So other than the family drama and the financial, I don't know if it was a financial thing, there is a lot of political ramifications. Oh, the group also killed an older person from Veles before and used his car to kidnap the girl. Apparently this person was also knew them, or God knows how he was involved. But there is a lot of political drama over the whole thing. So Palevsky is a former high-level SDSM party official. He was, but this is back in the 90s. He was head of their Skopje chapter. He used this to build several apartment buildings in the city, one in which the family apparently lived in. So, you know, there are also speculations. This is how he knew at least the father. So he made a lot of money with this. He had reportedly extensive police ties with the SDSM police people, such as Zoran Verushevsky. He started one of the first political magazines in the country meant to attack VMRO, meant to attack the right. As VMRO had Focus, which was the original famous political magazine, which favored independence, free markets, and reforms in the country, and a proper Macedonian national identity. Palevsky had Start. He had people like Mirka Velinovska, Vasko Evtov write for him, like the best SDSM journalists attacking VMRO. Then as SDSM adopted the policy of we have to make concessions to everybody around us, Palevsky, he began like a fringe nationalist movement. He would adopt like this kind of Nazi runic symbols, like the black sun, which is used in Ukraine now. He would make them out to be like the old Slavic symbols. Like he would adopt the story of Russian patronage over Macedonia, Slavic unity, brotherhood, and you know, having the Russians help us defeat the Albanians. I met him only once in my life, and it was when a foreign journalist came here looking for pro-Russian people to talk to, and I said, okay, I'll hook you up with this guy. He had some even worse suggestions, this foreign guy, so I said, okay, maybe Palevsky would be at least English-speaking, and you know, he would go at length about Kissinger and Brzezinski starting the war in Afghanistan to, you know, sap Russia, etc. He would have like not the Jewish angle. He would have, I think, the Vlach angle. We have just like there are conspiracy theories about the Jews across the world, in the Western world, and in Russia, of course. We would have much lesser, but still some similarities in the Vlach community here. Like you don't know who they are. They speak a strange language. They are interlinked. They have businesses. etc. So I think he would espouse. I haven't listened to him in a long time, but I remember he would espouse this theory as well. And so now, once this happened, the political angle, which we discussed before we started recording, on the left, obviously, is that, well, look at these people, they're waving the Macedonian national symbols, like the flag of Kutlesh. He would use it as well in his party. The party is called the right, like Levica is called the left, so his party is called the right, Desna. Look at their faces, they're all like Vumera types. This is what happens with them. We keep telling you they're all crazy, etc. And then on Vumera's side, Vumera reacted very angrily to this. They said, listen, he's going on TV shows like Infomax, which was pro-Vumera, but now is with the government. He's not being, these are outlets clearly funded by the government, by businessmen close to the government, to weaken us. They are taking on a role of being more nationalist, more patriotic, more Vumera than we are, promising, like Levica does as well, promising we'll arrest everybody on the left, we'll restore the name immediately, we'll have a government without any Albanians in it, etc., to make us look weak and not Macedonian enough. And the end game is, and they're funded by the left, they're funded by the Albanians. In the end game is that they take votes from us, and SDSM beat us to a draw, hopefully, with the help of the Albanian votes. Palevski had some minor arrest. It's actually a serious crime here. He was caught allegedly digging for hidden gold. It's one of the things he would also be doing. They would buy a map. They would tell them, listen, this was a rich Turkish family. They have the gold hidden, buried there. And they would go with metal detectors and stuff. And he was caught while doing this with a handgun, with a pistol, which is a pretty serious crime after the war of 2001. And he was not charged, he was not prosecuted over this. So Vumera would say, listen, not only SDSM funds him to pretend that he's a Macedonian patriot, well, we are not. They're even letting him go from actual criminal cases he does. And they didn't say this, but this is the logical end point to this, that even the pro-Russian groups in Macedonia, it's Palevski's group, it's Rodina, Steve Akimovsky, the mayor of Karpoš, used to do this. He's now in serious business with DUI, with Albanian developers, but he would be like an opposition figure and critic of Albanians and pro-Russian. So all these parties, Vumera does not say this, but the logic continues that we have the government, possibly even the embassy, supporting, astroturfing these types of movements to justify the fact of their involvement, the continued use of money for political influence in Macedonia, that we're fighting Russian influence, but at the same time, is it authentic Russian influence, or is it just people gathered by the secret police here, by the SDSM-led secret police, and told, okay, you're not playing the role of an anti-Albanian politician, you're playing the role of a pro-Russian politician, and we'll have use you to weaken Vumera. And then this girl just got caught up in all this, likely because of her father was a complete idiot.
Wow, that's a very thorough explanation. Sounds like he was a useful idiot to the government, to the left, to perhaps the U.S. Embassy, and then this crime occurred, and it sounds, is it a crime, a financial crime is what it sounds like.
Well, I couldn't imagine anything else, honestly.
Yeah, so, but whatever the case may be, it sounds like he and his party are pretty much finished for now. So.
No, he was not a party to begin with. He was gathering some signatures to influence the church as well. He had some friends in the church. So there is a division between a pro-Bulgarian priest. A couple of them are actually pro-Bulgarian. We restored Jovan as part of the deal with the Serbian church after years of imprisonment and exile in Serbia. He's now again a Macedonian bishop. He's openly espousing the Serbian church, also declares himself not to be a Macedonian but a Byzantine, a Romei, ethnically.
Wow.
We had
Exotic.
in the past, I'm not sure, I mean, it's crazy. We had in the past people who would espouse like uniat with Vatican, along the lines of like what Goca Delchev apparently believed. We have a couple of obviously pro-Macedonian priests. So it's a huge mishmash of identity and intelligence and dark money and I don't know. It's a huge mess. Once we start breaking up the Macedonian national identity, everything is up for grabs, obviously.
Yeah, I mean I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Because I believe conspiracy theories are far too simple for what is a complex and often confusing world. I do believe that people can share the same worldview, and then since they all then share the same worldview and act in unison in many ways, then it seems like, it's a concerted effort, like they're all meeting in the Star Chamber to direct things from on high. I mean, as I've mentioned many times, as we've talked about many times in this podcast, and as I've written about, the State Department officials, Americans in the State Department, of course, all largely graduate from the same schools. They have the same worldview. They have the same. They despise national identities and religion, mostly Christians and Jews. They seem to be fine with Muslims for some reason. But again, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but it's a case of all of these players having the same worldview and using all of these, as we mentioned earlier, events to further their own aims. And in this case, it's the discrediting of Macedonians who simply want to be known as Macedonians living in Macedonia and having their own history and culture and identity, etc. And ultimately, I think that's what it all points to and what it's all about, unfortunately. Well, let's pivot from this tragedy. I do want to bring in one thing before we jump to the next thing that we talked about before recording, which is the blacklist. And you mentioned Kosovo, and I just noticed, I think it was yesterday, that Rumen Radev, the president of Bulgaria, is now calling for Kosovo to include Bulgarians in their constitution before Kosovo can do anything. And apparently there's 15,000 Bulgarians in Kosovo as opposed to 3,500 Bulgarians in Macedonia. So, see, folks, once you start this game, it doesn't end. There is no end point. So,
he means the people of Gora, which are practically Muslim, Slavic-speaking. We would call them Gorani usually. And we would say, okay, they're Macedonians, they're Gorani Macedonians. They live in like a very poor rural mountainous part of southwest Kosovo. Some would move to Skopje, like there are some prominent families here in Skopje, but I think they have a census now, and Kosovo, because of the Serbs, has like a constitution which allows for like a lot of ethnic minorities. Like the Croats actually didn't want to have just the Serbs as a minority, so they're adding everybody, the Croats, I think they have the Macedonians actually, the Turks, several versions of Roma, etc. And now Radev says, give us a Bulgarian designation as well. They're doing the same, Bulgarians are doing the same in Albania. They're issuing passports to Macedonians there in the east of Albania and asking them to identify as Bulgarians, obviously. But there were some arrests now recently, allegedly, from Albania of Bulgarian diplomats, I guess, or local officials more likely, who would be helping in the issuing of these passports. But yeah, it's going to be a mess, especially now with Serbia having elections, Vučić winning, apparently having some kind of support from at least from the ambassador, from Ambassador Chris Hill. So there's going to be a lot of movement there, for sure.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about elections in Macedonia, let's touch a little bit on the so-called blacklist. When the current U.S. ambassador Angela Aguilar came to Macedonia a year and a half ago, she said there's far too much corruption here. We're going to start cracking down. Yeah, she's right on the corruption. That's everybody, even the all Macedonians agree that there's far too much corruption in Macedonia, and has been for some time now.
A lot of it generated by the embassy.
True. Or encouraged, perhaps, by the embassy. Is a better way of putting it. Yeah. So so the U.S. Treasury, it's the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Treasury that created this so-called blacklist, meaning that if you're on the blacklist, if you have any assets in the United States, they're frozen. You can't come to the United States, etc. It's more of a reputational thing than anything else. I mean, most people put on the blacklist, so-called blacklist, don't have any assets in the States, or were smart enough not to in the first place. And so anyway, so the latest addition to this, so last time we talked on our podcast, we mentioned that the Golden Boy Zoran Zaev was not on the blacklist, but he was, let's see, to use a phrase from today, he was blacklist adjacent through somebody else. So,
honorable mention.
Exactly. So yeah. So now we have a new addition earlier this month. I think what is this, December 5 on this press release from the State Department. So the former Deputy Prime Minister Angushev was designated, and due to his involvement in significant corruption, quote unquote. So while serving as Deputy Prime Minister, he abused his official position to benefit his private business interests, undermining the confidence of Macedonia's public in their government institutions and public processes. And I should put a point on here that his wife and children are also on the blacklist as well. Although I assume his children are grown. They're not.
Yeah, he has businesses with the Serbian energy trader Hamovic, and they're usually working out of Vienna. And after the Colored Revolution, while they were negotiating the name change with Zaev, he said, "My son tells me from Vienna that if we don't change the name, if we don't join the EU," he had this pathetic comment, "I'm not coming back to Macedonia," and now the poor boy can't go to America.
Yeah. That's like everybody here that says, if Trump is elected, I'm moving to Canada. Well,
Yeah.
we're still here. Yeah. So anyway, he's on the so-called blacklist. It's one step, because he was a favorite of Zaev. It's kind of one step closer, it seems to me, that perhaps Zaev eventually, and all those around him, like what's his name? He's being touted as a potential citizen candidate for president of Filipče.
Filipče just carried out, this is how crazy it gets. He was just in the news today. He carried out a brain surgery on an awake patient.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody asks, wait, Zaev or someone else? Okay.
This sounds like Hannibal Lecter when he, he has the late actor Ray Lolita sitting around
the screenwriters of this season's episodes are really, really pulling off stuff.
Was it successful, this surgery?
Guess
or is
so,
it too early to tell?
I guess so. I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. But I thought he was I didn't know he was a brain surgeon. I thought he was a heart surgeon.
Crap. He's a surgeon of some kind.
He's a surgeon of all things. So
I'm going to assume brain, because I don't think they'll just let you do it. If you're some other kind, you have to Google exactly, but they can't say. So the thing with this guy is that Angushev is that this is not the state, the Treasury. This is the State Department list.
Oh, this is the
only
State
banned
Department,
from entering the U.S.
Oh, okay.
I don't think his businesses are affected, if he has any there. Obviously, there was a lot of corruption allegations about him. He would issue, as minister, land to his wife to build like solar or hydro plants in Macedonia. He was angling to seize the Feni, the large nickel smelter near Kavadarci, which is largely dependent on energy prices and energy supply, which is now going defunct. He would give money to his own companies from the state budget through this notorious innovation fund. So corruption is no problem. He was accused by IRL, which is a news outlet funded by the embassy. They had a report of him influencing permitting of for import of heating oil, which he was using in some of his companies, not sure which one, which is allegedly dangerous, carcinogenic or stuff. And then he sued Irola, which is run by Sashka Cvitkovska, the darling of the embassy, the darling of SDSM journalist, who is like a complete extortionist now. She writes a report about Jean Mitrev, the heart surgeon. Days later, prosecutors filed charges against him. Months later, he's forced to sell his hospital to Albanian businessmen. So she's like a complete now pay-to-play journalist. And Yushev is also pay-to-play. He had the judge sentence Sashka for $1 dinar or 60 dinars, €1, I'm not sure. And the judge had, and like an apology, you have to print an apology, that's it. And the judge, in her explanation, she had something like, well, this company is registered as an NGO, so we can't assume they're media, so then the media application does not apply to them, blah, blah, blah. She was trying to be creative with her ruling, and the embassy went ballistic, both the US and the EU embassy. They had the Irola journalists invited or visited them at the office, I don't know. They had these angry comments, and like weeks later, Andrushev is on the blacklist after this happens. So he really, kicked the hornet's nest. But it also comes at a time when there are all these reports that Andrushev, he's a professor at the Faculty for Electronics, where Christian Mickovsky also teaches. So Andrushev is now obviously closer to Zaev than to Kovachevsky. So there is all these reports that Mickovsky is courting Zaev, trying to split SDSM in half, trying to have him influence his supporters not to vote for Kovachevsky's list in the elections, split the party, and then in exchange for Zaev being on the good graces of the next Vimera government, which would turn all its anger, all its ire against Kovachevsky's wing of the party. So the embassy does not like this, obviously. And this is also seen as a message both to Zaev, but also to Mickovsky. Zaev came out publicly in support of Andrushev. He issued a statement on Facebook saying he's a huge businessman, he helped the country immensely, all the economic successes of my term were due to him, like, that's not much, but still. And the ambassador was asked about this, and she said, okay, she practically said, we take note of this. Zaev has the right to stand up for his friend, like some kind of a cold response. And this coupled with the previous mention of Zaev when they were blacklisting a corrupt Montenegrin businessman, this makes it all very clear that Zaev is in for some serious trouble soon.
Yes, the question is, when will the U.S. if it does, ultimately, when will the U.S. put Zaev on that blacklist? Because we have elections coming up in Macedonia. We have elections coming up here as well, which is a whole other. We'll get into that in our 2024 preview. Does it? So you mentioned something there that the State Department and its involvement in Macedonian elections. Look, it's no secret that the United States State Department, and I always try and use that phrase as opposed to just saying the Americans of the United States, because it's not. It's the United States State Department primarily, and the administration, in this case, the Biden administration, interferes in governments and elections around the world. So I just finished reading Bibi's book, his autobiography, Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who is the longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel in Israel's 76-year history almost. And it's a fascinating read. It's over 600 pages. I'll bring you a copy. You'll enjoy it. But this is our greatest ally in the Middle East. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. It is the center of all of history, in my opinion. And Bibi writes openly about how the Obama administration openly interfered. First the Clinton administration, then the Obama administration openly interfered in the government of Benjamin Netanyahu, and especially in the elections. And Bill Clinton, going back to the 90s, Bill Clinton bragged about it openly to Bibi on the phone.
Yeah.
You know, we tried to keep you out of office, and it's just kind of that's look, you know, internal politics. If Vumro is trying to split Zaev from Syriza and do this, that, and the other, or the other way around, that's politics. That's the way it works.
That's also ugly, but I can understand that.
Yeah, that's internal. That's Macedonians, you know, fighting each other. Fine, that's the way it works. That's the game. But when the U.S. State Department starts getting involved, then we have Houston. We have a problem. And so anyway, I forgot where I was going with that. You had said something in elections and no, I completely forgot. Sorry.
We're going to discuss the polls with the coming.
Oh, the polls. Yes. Well, that's a good pivot to the polls. So we do have elections, and looks like have they definitely settled on? So we got parliamentary and presidential elections in the spring in Macedonia.
Yeah.
Do we have dates settled?
Yeah, it was May something. It's a Wednesday in early May, something.
Oh, so
like
it will
that.
be a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's going to be on Wednesday because they figured out that something about the Constitution will not let us mix the two dates if it's Sunday,
Holiday.
and when the president needs to, you know, step down, and then so they decided it has to be a Wednesday eventually. Okay. SDSM climbed down from their demand that the presidential elections are held separately. They were hoping they will win the presidential elections with the help of the Albanian vote, and then demoralize Vëmbëro before the general elections. But in the end, we'll have the first round of presidential elections and then a joint vote of the second round of presidential elections and the general elections.
The first round of general elections for parliament, because there's a second. There could be a second round.
No. There is no. There can be a revote, but no.
Oh.
Yeah, no. We only have 2 rounds for presidential elections and for local elections, for municipal, for the mayors. Mm-hmm. But for general elections, it's one and done. One day in the evening you get the result.
See, I'm way rusty on this. So
okay. Yeah.
So okay, yeah. And by the way, I noticed that at least Republica's reporting had mentioned Stevo the other day in some article and said outgoing president Stevo Pendarovski.
Yeah. Well, there is not much hope he will be nominated.
Yeah.
He actually stepped down. He said he was asked by journalists, "Do you think about second term?" He said no.
Oh.
And the journalists left it at that, and then, but reported obviously this guy is not planning on running because it's very clear.
Yeah.
And then when they reported it like this, then his office issued a statement. No. He meant I'm not thinking about it right now. I'm thinking about other things while we're talking now at the moment.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the ice cream cone I'm going to have later on. So.
But still haven't decided whether to run. It's crazy. I mean, Oliver Spasovski is obviously running. He's launching a campaign. He keeps posting pictures with the ambassador Aguilar. Look at my best friend.
I'm not sure if with the Macedonian public that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, but it's very important for him, for his audience, who he believes will appoint him president, and for the Albanians, of course.
Somebody pointed out on the Twitters, X or one of the other platforms the other day, that Spasovski's hair looks very much like the Albanian double-headed eagle.
Yeah. It's not a coincidence. It's him appealing to his voters.
Well, okay. Let's talk about polls and elections. And we have the other issue, of course, which is the last 100 days of the government and who's going to be, is an ethnic Albanian, Jafari going to be? Let's set that aside for later. I don't want to talk about that stuff. Let's look at the polls. The polls, latest poll has Vëmbëro at almost 27%, just over 9% for Syriza and oddly enough, in terms of popularity contest, which the percentages are never great when you compare them to other Western democracies, but Miskoski is at almost 13%. Ali Ahmeti is at 6.5%, and Kovachevsky is at 4%, 4 and change, which is kind of
behind Ahmeti.
Behind Ahmeti, yeah. So, and all good. Of course, I think the largest percentage on here is don't know, won't vote, haven't made up my mind, so, which is, and I should say that the fourth most popular party right now is Levica, so, which is, being a conservative, is problematic from my standpoint. But
and it's meant to drain votes from Vemero, like we discussed when talking about Palevsky.
Yeah. So, but even with these numbers, I don't know if Vemero can get to the magical number of 61. I doubt it.
So Vlado Jurchev had an estimate that this means 60 for Vemero and 30 or 29 for SDSM, but that's before we count SDSM likely running with DUI on the same list, which will put off some ethnic Macedonians and some ethnic Albanians when they see the list, but still it would add some of the DUI votes or some of the SDSM votes to the DUI tally, because DUI is now obviously the bigger, stronger party of the two. And then, it's the margin of fraud, then it's whether, especially in the Albanian districts. Last time we had power, curiously, run out in the State Electoral Commission as they were counting the votes. Last time we had also the U.S. Embassy insisting we vote during peak COVID, so something else might happen next year to influence turnout, or maybe some kind of, I was joking that there might be some major announcement like the name recognition. This time it could be like maybe the U.S. announcing it's removing visas for Macedonians, maybe in the future. Something that would shock the public before the elections, like a palpable, deliverable that would make them vote SDSM, or something with regard to the EU. So then maybe the Alliance of Albanians party joins SDSM and DUI in the same list. So this might really even out the odds between Vemero and SDSM, and then Vemero wins, but not by enough that it's a drubbing of SDSM, and then we get to the hard part of forming a coalition with the Albanian parties, which may demand
everything.
Yeah, the Albanian opposition parties, they're saying we want changing of the anthem, of the flag of the country. We will insist that Vemero signs on to this deal with Bulgaria, accepts the Bulgarian demands because we want to join the EU before we agree to form a coalition with them. 2016, we remember how the CIA director Brennan came to Albania, and then days later, the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama came up with the Tirana platform, which Vemero rejected, but the SDSM accepted, and they formed the government, so it's very possible we have some of that kind of interference. And maybe we have to wait for the US elections before we know who will be allowed to form a government. Maybe we have a technical government first, and then wait for the outcome of the November elections.
Well, before we get to that, what was the quote of James O'Brien? He's the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs.
Yeah.
So he was there
during
at the OSCE confab.
Yeah. Blinken was here, but only briefly. They both, Lavrov was here. They missed, everybody flew out of the country, like Blinken and, I don't know, David Cameron. They all left the country before Lavrov came. And then, but Jim O'Brien, the new Assistant Secretary for Europe and Eurasia, who's a Balkan hand, he remained. He met Mickovsky, and allegedly before he met Mickovsky, he had this interview with one of the embassies, U.S. Embassy's beloved outlets, 360 Degrees, in which they asked him, okay, well, Vemero says, we have a plan for Bulgaria, but we can't give you that, which Mickovsky, okay, he actually says this, we can't tell you the plan before we are elected in power, then we will explain the plan or we'll implement the plan or something. And O'Brien had this horrifically tough comment saying, well, if a person tells you this, I would not buy a used car from that person. So practically vote SDSM.
Yeah, I actually know personally the largest car salesman in southern Arizona who also sells used cars, and he's a honest, good man of quite some upstanding, and I would put him up against any single American employee of the United States Department of State any day of the week. Now, James O'Brien, I think it's worth pointing out, became the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs on just October 5, so just a little over 2 months ago. Previously, Jim O'Brien was founder and vice chair of what? The Albright Stonebridge Group.
Ah, very nice.
There it is. You see, it's this it's this U.S. circle, what's the word I'm looking for? It's this continual...
You shouldn't use cabal now.
Yeah, it's going into the private sector, in this case, the Albright Stonebridge Group, going into the going from the State Department and then going into the private sector and working in countries where you have expertise and worked for a long time, and then going back out into the State Department and then going back into the private sector. It's a revolving door. That's the word I was looking for. I'm losing my ability.
Philip Rieker currently works for them.
Philip Rieker currently works for them, right? So it's a revolving door of. The best example is John Kirby in the Biden administration right now, who goes in and out. Except for him, it's military, State Department, CNN, back to the State Department, or White House.
The military complex or the Albanian mafia, which is the Albright.
It's all the same. I mean,
group.
Let me just say this as clear as I can for our listeners and for the Macedonian public in general. There's two systems of justice and rules and values in this country, my country, the United States of America. And then we run around preaching, no, you can't, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. We shouldn't do it either. But we practice it, and then we preach against it, and that's why nobody, talking about the blacklist earlier, it said eroding trust in institutions. Well, we have the same problem here. People don't trust the institutions because you've got people like the entire United States Department of State, including Jim O'Brien and others, that erode the confidence of Americans and others in these institutions. And Yuval Levin, one of the authors I love and follow, born in Israel but an American by choice, has a wonderful book about institutions and how trust is eroding, and that's bad for any society. So,
not for Andrushev, but for some people like Gruevsky, it's a badge of honor to be on the blacklist of this U.S. administration.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now let's then pivot to 2024. 2023 is over. But you were mentioning there, as we were talking about elections, that perhaps we'll have to wait until the American elections of 2024, which, of course, as a reminder for listeners, is in November. We have the presidential elections, shaping up to be a rerun of 2020, of the nearly dead Joe Biden and the corrupt, narcissistic Donald Trump, plus Congress, 435 seats, plus 1/3 of the United States Senate, plus a large number of governorships, state houses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the main event, of course, the focus is on the president and the Congress and the Senate, or I should say the House and the Senate. So I don't know if we can wait that long, November, if elections are in Macedonia in May. But yeah, preview of 2024 in general. Let's see. We have two kind of regional wars that could become global wars going on. Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis. We've got China and Taiwan. We've got what I would say is the very good likelihood of a constitutional crisis in the United States with our elections because of the various court cases that Trump faces and the not insignificant chance of Joe Biden dropping dead. I wish him good health because the alternative is Kamala Harris. So and all kinds of, that's fraught with all kinds of possibilities. You've got the continuing, this is one that flies under the radar, I think, is continuing increase in debt, especially amongst the Western countries. Incredible amounts of debt.
They'll just print the money, don't worry.
Just print the money. No society has ever printed or minted its way to success. That's just an iron fact of life. So I'm missing a couple of things that could happen in 2024 that would really make it a really bad year, or a very good year for the sweet meteor of death to come and take us all away.
Yeah. That would be that's the optimistic scenario.
But yeah, it's shaping up to be a real shit show.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, I just want the Ukraine thing over one way or another. That's really been going on my nerves, and because I like both sides there, and as people, and I can't really stand to continue to watch this go on.
But I think the bigger issue is Israel right now, because that's as I mentioned, that's the focus of all history, and it's the only democracy in the Middle East. It's and most of the Arab countries are privately rooting for Israel. Believe it or not, this is a fact.
It's a civil war between the Shia and the Sunni, and Israel is just playing here to survive, okay, it's playing to aggravate the situation, but
I think they're playing to survive. It's for Israel. It's an existential
I can
problem,
understand the reason.
Yeah,
they're doing that, and for me, it's happy. I'm not happy. Just it's just it's no longer Slavic people who really do not need to be transformed or changed, or what was the words we would use during the neocon era, the Iraq war, like democratized or brought freedom to that. We are no longer in the spotlight, but it's actually like the Israel Sunni Shia war, and then the possibility of U.S. going to war against Islam again, which does need some transforming, obviously, in human rights, in basic decency, where they're failing at. Whether the U.S. is a tool to do this, to try to do this again after the dismal disaster of the Bush wars, I don't know. I don't think so. That time we could count that maybe the U.S. would succeed in transforming the Arab world like it did Korea or Germany, Japan, Germany. I don't think there is any chance of the U.S. committing, carrying out, and even if they did, like what they're going to pull them into, they're going to send LGBT consultants in the Middle East. I don't think the U.S. has the transformational capacity for actual democracy, actual human rights, actual free markets anymore, without all this crazy stuff that comes with it. As for the elections, I don't know, I guess, we have to know that, you said Trump is corrupt, maybe. They keep posting this data point that he actually lost money while being president, while everybody else, the non-corrupt ones, they're 10 times richer than starting off, and the way he's being charged, it looks like, imagine if Russia was doing it.
It's certainly perceived by many in the public of every time the left, the progressives, the Democrats, etc., throw another charge at him or something like that, his numbers go up. So, but that, I think, again, that just points to, the whole, the way they've treated Hunter and Joe Biden and his business things, with the way they've treated Trump. Although that's gaining, the whole thing with Hunter and Joe Biden's business interests is gaining a bit of purchase, even in the mainstream news. So,
but even that only because they want to have Gavin or somebody else.
That's
honest journalists doing honest work for.
He has great hair, So
Well, speaking of great hair, I'm hoping that we'll have something like after the disappointment of the Trump term. I'm hoping we can have something like Tucker and maybe Don Jr. on a ticket if Trump is removed. Even though knowing the deep state people, they will probably what was it? He was removed from the Colorado ballot.
Moved from the Colorado primary ballot right now. So without getting...
There's a problem, but not disastrous. You can win win it all by losing Colorado, but probably they may have him like removed from Michigan, Pennsylvania, like the day before or the day after he is. He becomes the nominee of the Republican Party. Like, you cannot change him anymore.
Yeah, that's why I said constitutional crisis, because there's this. Even though I think the Supreme Court will probably rule on the Colorado case, saying no, he has to be on the ballot. It's up to the people to decide.
But then he won't. They won't have time to run it through the court if they leave it for September. They can leave it for September and then...
Yeah, we got 50 states, 50 state secretaries. We got red states, blue states. Anything can happen. There's the primaries. There's the general. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Now, we're headed... We will have a constitutional crisis in 2024 in this country, which will have...
Maybe a civil war.
Which will... No, I'm not going to have a civil war. Not yet, at least. But that'll have reverberations, negative reverberations around the world. So, all leading up. Since this is Christmas, Christmas season, the birth of Christ. So I
won't mention the possibility of Hillary being the candidate.
Okay. No, that's end times. That's eschatological in talking about the Antichrist. So
that's why I won't mention it. Of course.
So, but there's gonna be the constitutional crisis in the United States.
Do you want to have some water, have some time to regain composure?
Yeah, will have negative effects for the rest of the world. So, but you know what? Okay, let's end on a high note. Okay, here's the high note. So all of these events we're talking about, by and large, there's not much that you can do about them, or I can do about them, or any one person can do about them. So, when you get down to a smaller polity like Macedonia with 1.8 million people and even fewer voters, there's room to do things on the positive in there, and I hope Macedonia prevails in its elections. But I think the thing now, especially the Christmas as we celebrate here or around the world for December 25, as Macedonians and other Orthodox celebrate on January 7, is it's all about gratitude and the gift. So Christmas is about the gift of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, come to save us, brought into the world because of the Jewish people. Jesus was a Jew; he wasn't a Palestinian, and it's about God's gift, and that's why we give gifts at Christmas, because we are doing what God did for us, which was give the gift of His Son, so that we could have salvation, so we could have eternal life, so we don't have to live in hell for eternity. So that's what it's all about. And at this time, I think the thing to do is to just enjoy as much as possible your family, your friends, the season, the good gifts, all of the good gifts that we have been given by our Creator God.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Let's end it on that.
High note, yes.
Yes, on that. We'll see if we do another one before Orthodox Christmas. Maybe not. Depends on a couple of things. But are we going to get this out today? Today's the 24th.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, well, then we'll wish a Merry Christmas to all of our Catholic, some Orthodox, and Protestant.
Even those guys,
even those guys, and even non-denominational believers who celebrate on the 25th of December.
Wiccans, the pagans, the solstices.
Yeah.
All of you guys.
All right. Yep.
Okay, buddy.
Good podcast. Good talking to you.
You too. Take care.
Take care.